Man lives in the sunlit world of what he believes to be reality, but there is an unseen, by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side.
Creepy. Welcome to episode 261 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 261. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with the Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, the nerd, the murd. I know we're well into August. Let's see. This episode, I have it right here, comes out August 9th. So we're well into August, and this is well past. But I have my tickets for Saturday for The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yay!
I'm excited. Yeah, we have a theater down here that just went under a $3 million renovation, and they put in D-Box and everything like that. So I'm really excited because the big theater for us was about half an hour away. This theater is like 5 minutes from our house, and I can't wait to see because we went there right after we got here. We saw it. I don't remember what movie we saw. It may have been a Marvel movie, but anyway, very interested to see what this renovation looks like and everything. But yeah, I'll see The Mandalorian and Grogu next week. It looks really, really good. I'm excited for it. That will be the conclusion of the Mandalorian chapter. So I'm assuming Ahsoka will be in here somewhere because I know her second season. Whoops, hit my headset. Her second season has been greenlit and will be going on. So very excited. Newest Star Wars fair, turning their TV show into a movie, and I'm excited. So
yeah, I like Mando. Mando's fun.
I do too. Mandalorian's been a great series. I've enjoyed every episode of it.
I like Mandalorian. I like Book of Boba. I actually like it all. I don't dislike any of the Star Wars. Some of it I like better than others.
Yeah, some of it's slower paced than others. We've talked about it. Andor was much slower paced, and kind of harder to get through. So, but anyway, yeah, that's all I had. You got anything you want to step over to the nerdery side of the house?
Kind of excited about today's nerdery.
Go for it.
Today we're going to talk about Tales from the Darkside. It's an American horror anthology television series created by George A. Romero. A pilot episode was first broadcast on October 29th, 1983. The series was picked up for syndication, and the first season premiered on September 30th, 1984. The show would run for a total of 4 seasons until its cancellation on July 24th, 1988. The series spans various genres of speculative fiction, including science fiction and fantasy, in addition to horror, and many episodes have darkly comic elements. The movie Creepshow was released in 1982. It was based on the EC horror comic books of the 1950s, such as Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror. In light of the film's moderate success, its producer Laurel Entertainment decided to explore potential for a television series based on the feature. However, Warner Brothers had the rights to some elements of Creepshow. Laurel chose to move forward with a series that omitted aspects of the movie that were owned by Warner Brothers. The result was a Tales from the Darkside, which explored the same themes as Creepshow, but discarded the framing device and other elements that were based directly on the comics. Some episodes were adapted from works of well-known authors or written by the authors themselves. Stories or teleplays by Frederick Poole, Harlan Ellison, Clive Barker, Michael Bishop, Robert Bloch, John Cheever, Michael McDowell, and Frederick Brown were used over the course of the series. 2 episodes, Word Processor of the Gods, and I lost my notes.
Huh? Been a while since that happened.
Yeah, no kidding. Word Processor of the Gods. And sorry, right number.
I see the light on your face. So
yeah,
I think
sorry, right number. Were based on short stories by Stephen King. The later was adapted for television by King himself. So Word processor of the gods and sorry, right number. I was going to say sorry, wrong number, but I knew that was wrong. The show had a low budget and often utilized only a single set or location throughout entire episodes, similar to a stage play. It was a bi-coastal production, with some episodes being shot in New York and others in California. Now, the opening credits were all shot in and around Pittsburgh, because that's where George A. Romero's production company is based, which operated a lot with the production company of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Well, in the intro alone puts you in the mood before the episode even started. The whole opening sequence felt like forbidden late night television.
Yes, it did.
You know.
The narration for that was performed by Paul Sparrer and was written by Romero. The opening and closing themes are performed by Donald Rubinstein, who co-wrote the music with Eric Lindsay. The entire opening sequence, again, was filmed outside of Pittsburgh. It's not far from where George Romero filmed most of his movies in the 70s and early 80s. Romero was familiar with the area because he had lived there for many years and scouted numerous filming locations when he went into production of Tales from the Darkside TV series. The bridge location used to be called Deal's Bridge, but it is not. It is now known as Turner's Bridge. Some of the forest footage and the creek flowing over the rocks was filmed at Clear Creek State Forest, just north of Pittsburgh. Other filming locations, such as the farm, the field, and the road where the old wooden fence were filmed, are in and around Boswell, Pennsylvania, and Ligonier, Pennsylvania. However, much of that area has changed dramatically since the opening shots were filmed in 1983. So originally, you had a pilot, which premiered in late 1983. But it was almost a year before you got the full series order. So counting the pilot, that first season is 24 episodes. The second season is 24 episodes. The third season is 22 episodes. And the fourth season is 20 episodes, which is quite a bit. That's a lot of episodes altogether. That's what? I'm not going to do math now.
No, don't ask me to do math.
48, 49, 50, 70, 90 episodes altogether, counting the pilot. Okay, so the George Romero worked on Creepshow with Stephen King and the other people who worked on that movie. And they had a good time making it, and the production company really wanted to basically have a Creepshow television series, but they couldn't quite get the rights. So what they did was they told George Romero, "Hey, why don't we just do one and we'll call it something else?" And he's like, "Why don't we call it Tales from the Darkside?" And they're like, "Oh, that works." So he filmed, and when I say, as he said, the opening sequence is really creepy. If you don't use the music, it's not. It's this beautiful little Pennsylvania farm country, Pennsylvania Dutch, bucolic area, and it's just these images, and it's just film a little creek, a little barn passing by, but you got this eerie music, and then you're going through this forest, and then everything turns into a photo negative after the dude says Darkside, and then you get these bloody graphics that say Tales from the Darkside.
Well, the intro did half the work of the show for you.
Oh yeah. It really set it up, and it's a fucking nightmare fuel, man. Because you think there's nothing scary about any of that.
No, and
which makes it even more scary.
Tales from the Darkside always felt like a show where nobody was guaranteed to survive, and sometimes that the lesson was just that life is not fair.
Life's not fair.
That's kind of. This was very different than a lot of anthology horror, because the endings were usually mean.
Yes.
They were very bittersweet. They were weird. It was a cool show.
Yeah, and I'm glad that George Romero was at the helm of it, because They were also funny, but they're darkly funny. And that dude has a dark, funny sense of humor. You
Well,
know what I mean?
his DNA was all over it,
Oh yeah, yeah.
from social unease, ordinary people, and extraordinary horror, uncomfortable endings. Um, you can feel Romero all over the show because even when the monster wasn't physical,
Hmm.
the atmosphere it, it always felt very rotten underneath,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like yeah, it's a beautiful bridge, except the underpinnings are crumbling.
Yeah.
And yeah, it had a very visceral feel about that.
Hmm.
It's kind of lovely. Its initial run, LBS Communications had distributed Tales from the Dark Side in first run syndication through the barter deal method. It aired on both independent stations and local network affiliates, typically being shown in late night time slots. Despite being a low budget syndicated show with little promotion, it managed to outperform higher profile network anthology shows from this period. These included Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories and the 1985 Twilight Zone revival, which both debuted on major networks in prime time while Tales from the Dark Side was airing in syndication. Distribution rights later passed to World Vision Enterprises after Aaron Spelling Productions acquired World Vision Enterprises and Laurel Productions in 1989. The rights are currently held by CBS Media Ventures, a subdivision of Paramount Global, due to CBS's absorption of Aaron Spelling Productions in the latter part of the 1990s. Paramount has handled the theatrical distribution of the 1990 Tales from the Dark Side movie, which was one of Laurel Entertainment's last productions, although this was still several years before they inherited the rights to the show through CBS's absorption of Aaron Spelling Productions. The executive producer, Richard Rubenstein, and his company, Laurel, would go on to make the horror anthology series Monsters, which premiered in 1988 and ran for 3 seasons, as well as Tales from the Dark Side of the movie, which was released theatrically in 1990. A sequel to the film was announced but never made. So they made Tales from the Dark Side. It got canceled in 1988. So they started doing Monsters right after that, which ran for 3 seasons. And then they did another series based on Monsters after that. So they were actually in production for a long time because a lot of the people who worked for Tales from the Dark Side also worked on Monsters. Monsters was a little more kid oriented, but it was still creepy as fuck. In November 2013, it was reported that Joe Hill, Alex Kurtzman, and Robert Orsi were developing a reboot of the series for the CW, the CBS television studio. In 2014, Hill said that he would serve as creative director and guide the show. Added Hill, Darkside is a loose reboot. It tells stories about different characters. It also tells an ongoing story. I love the original Tales from the Dark Side, the Outer Limits of the Twilight Zone, but I think in a post-X-Files world, there really is no room for a straight anthology show. I disagree, and that's the reason why I put that point in here. And that didn't take off because we never got it. I think a straight anthology show is just fine. You can
Great.
you can link the stories together a little bit if you want. You know, certain elements like the first heavy metal film. Everything was linked by the Lochnar, but in some cases it was a major plot point. In another case, it was just a marble a guy was playing with on the desk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it, and Tales from the Dark Side could do that. I think they did later, like in the 3rd season, they linked a few things together because of a certain plot device. But for the most part, it was straight anthology, and I think that's fine. As a matter of fact, this is we're doing basically a loose series on these anthology series because they were so influential on a lot of science fiction and fantasy television, and including just plain straight up drama and comedy were heavily influenced by the Twilight Zone, the Outer Limits, Tales from the Dark Side. Tales from the Dark Side, even though it was a small syndicated show, it had a big effect. I would say it had a much more betterer.
Much more betterer. Cheers.
Cheers.
Tukey, microphone. Cheers.
Than Amazing Stories, because Amazing Stories just kind of came and went. In my humble opinion, Amazing Stories wasn't that. There were some of them that were really good.
Yeah.
The tail, the belly uh, Gunner on
Yep.
the was a great episode, and it had just a little bit of magic in it, but for the most part, it was a straight up story, and it was adeptly told. But honestly, that's the only one I can really remember watching and thinking, "Oh, this is good." And for the most part, it was disappointing.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it didn't stick around. Even though it had Steven Spielberg's name on it. So I'm going to talk about an episode from each season and the pilot. Start with the pilot. It's called Trick or Treat. It was directed by Bob Balaban.
Hmm.
Gideon Hackles, played by Barnard Hughes, a rich and spiteful old man who holds an obsession for documenting and exploiting debts owed to him, annually offers trick-or-treaters the chance to search his house on Halloween night for their parents' IOUs, only to terrify them with animatronic ghosts. Over the course of the night, Mr. Hackles finds himself terrified by a real witch and genuine monsters and demons. Guest starring Max Wright. So Homeboy kind of gets his comeuppance in this because I don't think they're actual demons and monsters. I think it's just the people getting back at him. I have included a scene from that, the Trick or Treat pilot episode in our YouTube playlist. Some of the Tales from the Darkside stuff's kind of hard to find. It will pop up on streaming platforms occasionally. Matter of fact, at the time of this recording, it may be out there because it's readily available. What was great, there were a lot of young actors and older established actors that ran through this series that you really get to see them shine. Like in the new Twilight Zone series, there's a couple of episodes with Bruce Willis that are probably some of the best that they did, which we will talk about the new Twilight Zone series or the 1985 version. But in this case, there's a lot of great stuff. Do you remember this one, Trick or Treat, the pilot?
It's been so long since I've seen any of these. I'm probably not gonna remember any one particular episode. I just remember the overall feeling of these because again, as I said, this felt like late night forbidden TV.
Yeah, it was like Monty Python. I don't think I'm supposed to be watching this.
Yeah, because I remember, Saturday or Sunday night, whichever one they were on, because I don't remember anymore. You had the Monty Python, you had Benny Hill, you had, these shows that you kind of thought, maybe I'm really not supposed to watch these. And I had a lot of things in the middle of the night that I would watch. Night Tracks. Night Tracks was one I loved to watch.
I love Night Tracks. Yeah.
I felt Night Tracks was better than MTV. It had really cool videos, and pretty much all of Night Tracks were music that I liked.
Oh, Night Tracks or Night Flight?
No, Night Tracks. Night Flight would vary in and out of different
because you get
genres.
weird. One of them you would get weird science fiction shows and punk rock music videos, which I loved.
That was Night Flight. Night Tracks was very different because Night Tracks featured, I mean, for me, prog rock. It had a lot of prog rock in it because I remember the first time I saw an Alan Parsons Project video on there, and it was just a really cool night of video. But there was that, and there was just some TV shows that were on later at night that they weren't forbidden, as we would say, but they just had that feeling.
Yeah, they felt like, am I supposed to be watching this?
Yes.
Is this a broadcast from some other place in the world or another universe?
And Tales from the Darkside was that. Tales from the Darkside was one of those. They kind of continued this into the 90s with some stuff, and I think it was on CBS, and it was like CBS After Dark because there was Silk Stockings, which was a really cool detective show, but it had a little more sex orientation in it.
Silk Stockings was like a detective show, but on Cinemax. Only it wasn't on. It was on network television.
Right, but it wasn't quite Cinemax level.
No. Yeah,
it wasn't Skinemax. It
wasn't softcore.
No, but you had some of those. Night Gallery. was that way. Night
Yeah.
Gallery was that after hours late one. Twilight Zone was the one that was not.
Yeah.
It didn't have that, but this is where Tales from the Darkside lived, and so that was the long way to get to. I don't remember a whole lot of these episodes because it's been since the 80s since I watched them. I just remember the overall feeling of watching these shows because they were creepy, they were unsettling. It was this when you watch Tales from the Dark Side, it was this constant feeling that reality itself couldn't be trusted.
Exactly. Like you were getting this. It honestly felt like you were getting this broadcast from another Earth.
Yes.
Yeah, if you follow the idea of, parallel universes, this show came from a parallel universe and it just broadcast for a little bit.
Yeah.
I felt the same way about the Channel 27 Film Vault. Speaking of which, to totally derail my part, we did get a message from the creators of Channel 27 Film Vault, and they would like to talk to us about it.
Didn't you tell me about that?
I did.
Week? Yeah.
I did. I haven't contacted them back yet because I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Holler back at them today.
I think I will. Okay. So that was the pilot, and the pilot was important. But the thing about the pilot is you got the pilot and you had to wait a year for the series to come back. So you weren't really sure what the hell it was because when they say this had no advertising, it had no fucking advertising. It was just on. And it was on at like 9:00 at night on like a Friday or whenever it was it came on. But yeah. I want to see that it was on.
I was gonna say, I thought Tales of the Dark Side came on after the news.
Did it? Yeah, it was like 10:30.
Yeah, because that because these quote unquote forbidden shows that we're talking about that were not really forbidden, they just felt that way.
Yeah,
all came on after the news. If it was on the weekends, it would be after the news. If it was during the week, it would be after the talk shows.
Yeah,
the late night shows is when it would come on. And some of these, I mean, you would be getting at 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning is when they were broadcast.
Yeah, and this hit the sweet spot. I want to say Tales from the Dark Side came on. Like, yeah, you're right. It's like 10:30, but it was on the weekend.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, and I want to say it was KXA or Channel 21. That's who broadcast it.
Most commonly late night, after school, or on weekend time slots. Did not have. Let's see here. It doesn't really say. No, it doesn't really say the time, but I remember it being late night.
Yeah, it was definitely at night.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was like 9:30, may have been after the news, 10:30, but it was on a whenever the news ran on that local 21 station, it ran after that. And I can't remember if it was during the week or the weekends. I just know it was one of those things.
I don't think 27 had news back then.
Or 21.
I don't even think 21 did, because you got to remember back in the 80s, it was NBC, ABC, and CBS. We didn't even have Fox at that point. So you had 3 networks that had news. I think PBS had a news too, but none of the local affiliates, I don't think.
Channel 11 had news before it was CBS.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, because Ellen's dad used to read it in the afternoons.
Huh. I didn't remember that.
Yeah. That's why it freaked me out when I heard his voice in high school. It was like, what? Friendliest face in local television, Durwood Rowell. Okay. Season 1, the episode I want to talk about is called Slippage. Graphic designer Richard Hall, played by David Patrick Kelly, of Warriors fame and Twin Peaks, discovers that he has been turned down for promotion, hasn't received an invitation to his high school reunion, and that his own mother has failed to recognize him. Putting everything together, Richard determines that the source of this problem is that he is mysteriously being erased from existence. This does not have a happy ending.
They never do.
It was based on a short story by Michael Q. McDowell, who did a bunch of Star Wars books back in the 90s. This one creeped me the hell out because it seemed like it was so random. It's like, you poor bastard. Like his girlfriend leaves him, and I just so creepy. And it's like, oh my God, this could happen to anybody. Well, no, it can't, because again, this is a series that's coming from a different universe. But David Patrick Kelly in this is so good. And again, as I said, it's just a couple of sets. It's not special effects heavy. There's some, but it's all about the writing, the acting, the lighting, and the music. Just amazing. If you're gonna catch one from the first season, Slippage is a good one to try. For season 2, I picked Distant Signals. Television studio executive Gil Hearn, played by David Margulies, is approached by Mr. Smith, Lenny Van Doylen, a mysterious investor who asked him to complete the final episode of Mac's Paradise, a short-run detective series from 1965 that was canceled before said episodes were aired. Mr. Smith and the mysterious backers are willing to pay any price, specifically gold bars, to see the series finished, complete with bringing the original actor Van Conway, played by Darren McGavin, out of retirement. Unknown to the others, Mr. Smith is an alien from a planet that receives TV signals from Earth 20 years after they originally aired, and Mac's Paradise has become immensely popular on their planet. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's important for them. Do you remember this one?
No, but I'm going to sit here and tell you right now that I think the makers of Galaxy Quest were Tales from the Darkside fans.
Yeah. Yeah, it says this was released in 1985. Yeah. Oh my God, so good. But yeah, this one is very humor based. I've got some again, some scenes. I couldn't get full episodes. There are some full episodes out there, but they're in really bad quality. The Distant Signal review, Mr. Smith from the planet, the alien, he's the actor that played the germaphobe in Twin Peaks. So, I mean, they're getting some really good people, some weirdo people, as it were, indie people. Lenny Van Dolen. And Darren McGavin in this is just great because he's kind of pissed off that they canceled the show 20 years ago anyway. And he's kind of comforted by the fact that he will be a star forever. From season 3, I picked Red Leader. It's episode 16 of the 3rd season. Alex Hayes, Joe E. Tata, a shady and unscrupulous construction mogul, ends up meeting his deceased business partner, Jake Kane, played by Carmen Caridi, who literally climbs out of hell to see him. Alex also comes face to face with the devil, played by Peter Bromelo himself. Thoroughly impressed by his lifetime of sin, the devil offers Alex a position amongst his forces. This is really creepy. It's like, you are such a piece of shit that we want to hire you for hell. And the guy playing the devil is so fucking smarmy. Again, I've got some scenes that are pretty good. And instead of doing a whole bunch of makeup, they basically just make the dude scruffy, give him a couple of ears, and shoot him in red light. Effect is perfect. It works perfectly. As the devil, you believe him as the devil. It's just really, really good. I'm going back and forth between our playlist just to make sure I've got the stuff for it. For season 4, the episode I picked was Going Native. It is the 17th episode of the 4th season. Claire, played by Kim Greist, is an emotionless agent from an alien planet masquerading as a photographer. Every photograph she takes on her mission is sent to her superiors on her world, who wish to learn about humanity. For the final part of her assignment, Claire is tasked with joining a therapy group in an effort to understand human emotions. Claire must take great care not to get emotional herself, for if she feels what the humans feel, she will be banished from her planet forever. This was released in June of 1988, pretty soon before the series was canceled. And there were only 20 episodes, so this is close to the end of the series. Yeah, she ends up going native, but it's a really great and kind of heartfelt episode. Again, not all of them are scary. Not all of them have bad things happen. In some cases, it's kind of, hey, this girl really needs to be more human. It was written by Andrew Viner. What else can I say about Tales from the Darkside? We've mentioned that it seemed like it was forbidden or, from another universe. Because again, they didn't advertise any of this. You never got a promo. Tonight, Tales from the Darkside. That never happened. It was just on. They would have it in the TV guide. But I want to say it was on Channel 21, and it was either every night that it was on, or it was on in the weekends, like a Friday night. And Jeff's right. It was on after the news, whenever that was.
Mm-hmm. The endings of every show typically were not happy. They were generally cautionary in tale.
Yeah.
A lot of anthology horror tries to entertain you. Mm-hmm. Tales for the Darkside wanted to unsettle you.
Yeah.
You know,
from the opening scene.
The show mastered the feeling that something was wrong even before you knew what was wrong.
Yeah.
It was a great show.
Yeah.
It was a great show. Like I said, I don't remember individuals because I haven't watched it since the 80s, and that's 40 fucking years ago.
Well, I ended up watching because again, it's not streaming right now. There is also a film that was made in 1990 by the same production company, which had a higher budget. Mm-hmm. I also recommend that you go out and see that as well, because it's a lot of fun.
Where did you stream episodes? Because now I'm wanting to watch.
I got them on YouTube. They are not good quality.
That's okay. There's, I think, a couple I want to see. So
yeah, they're not good quality. I couldn't find a bunch, but I could find these episodes. But again, they're not great. But by the time this episode airs, they may be back on streaming. They were really inexpensively produced. They filmed them in New York and, at Silver Cup and in LA, I think on a Paramount studio. Mm-hmm. But they, you had a couple of sets and that was it. It was all down to the music and the acting. It wasn't a lot of special effects, but what they had were decent. I wouldn't say, groundbreaking, but they were good special effects.
Yeah.
And they hold up.
Yeah. And Tales from the Darkside wasn't about gore. It really wasn't. It was about unsettling you.
Yeah, and it was psychological.
And I like that. I like that cycle. From my whole wanting to dive into the serial killers and people who disappear and cult. All those things in my head are really what went into the Darkwind Paradox, because the Darkwind Paradox is very psychological. Tales from the Darkside was very psychological. I like stuff like that. I like stuff that unnerves you. And
it did. It was unnerving. But as Jeffrey alluded to, from the time it started, you're going to be unnerved. The theme song will unnerve you because it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong. There's something wrong with it. I cannot put my finger on what it is, but there's something wrong with it.
Like I said, the opening sequence did half the work of the show.
Yeah.
It started you off unsettling, and then it basically grabbed you by the throat and said, "You will watch." And then,
Yeah. And then 30 minutes later, you're like, God damn.
Yeah.
this is so fucking creepy. And I want to say that right after that, they would show like night game.
I think so. Yeah.
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 Because I remember it was on 21. It was on
Yeah.
21.
Yeah.
Which is a local affiliate here. I think it's still an independent station here.
Well, it became UPN and then became Paramount, but then Paramount's now with CBS. I don't know what 21 is there anymore.
It's an independent station, but it's housed in the Channel 11 because 21 used to be in Arlington, West Arlington, and now it's in Fort Worth or East Fort Worth with the Channel 11. But it's an independent station, but they're kind of like the child station of our CBS affiliate, Channel 11, which was also an independent station for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about it for Tales from the Darkside, other than get out and check it out. Again, when this airs, you should be able to stream it again because it pops up and out. It's one of those shows that's just really creepy and fun. You can find some of it on YouTube. I would not recommend any of the quality, but the episodes are too awesome.
Well, and
they're 25 minutes.
You talk about that. What is so funny is last week for us in real time was episode 248, which was the Twilight Zone. And my mother has become an avid listener now. which is
sorry. Hysterical. I'm such a potty mouth. I apologize.
Oh, she knows we are. But she's become a very avid listener now. She listens every week, and as I was flying into DFW, I was just kind of keeping her updated on progress and things like that because it was Mother's Day, and I was going to meet her for dinner. But anyway, she had told me she was listening to the show, and then right after she finished the show, she said there was a Twilight Zone marathon on Sci-Fi. So she watched that for a while. So I thought that was really kind of cool.
I think they're listening.
Yep, maybe. Could be.
Yeah. Hey, some things get a bump after our episodes air. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's been happening more often.
It is very strange.
Somebody's listening. Yeah. Somebody in the algorithm is listening.
Yeah. But not like we're some big, massive show out there or anything.
Yeah.
But, yeah, somebody's hearing it.
Somebody is hearing it. Yep. Some weirdo in programming.
Cool. I appreciate that. Thanks for that little journey. With that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Biography, Britannica, Wikipedia, New York Times, Cincinnati Enquirer, Oxygen, Murderpedia, Find a Grave, the Columbus Dispatch, and the AP News. And this is the story about Donald Harvey.
Donald Harvey.
So, hospital rooms are a place where you go to recover. You've got machines that are humming softly in the background. You've got nurses that are moving through the halls, families sitting beside beds, holding on to hope. They're waiting for good news. And when a patient dies, people grieve. But they also trust. They trust the doctors. They trust the nurses. They trust the system. Because sometimes when people die in a hospital, that's just a part of life. That's what made this case so terrifying. Because in the 1970s and 80s, patients in hospitals across Kentucky and Ohio began dying under unusual circumstances. Some declined suddenly, others seemed to improve only to crash without warning. And at first, police didn't see a pattern, but why would they? Because the man at the center of this all was not breaking into homes, stalking people in dark alleys, leaving threatening letters. He was cleaning rooms, he was delivering food trays, he was helping patients. He was quiet, he was polite, he was unremarkable. He was the kind of person that people barely noticed. However, behind that calm exterior was somebody who later claimed responsibility for dozens of murders, poisonings, smotherings, injections. These were deaths that weren't carried out with rage, but with just routine. And for many years, almost no one suspected anything. Because the killer wasn't outside the hospital, he was already inside. And this is the story of Donald Harvey. So we're back again on our A to Z journey of serial killers across America. We were at Kansas last week. This brings us to Kentucky. And this brings to kind of a different kind of serial killer because most serial killer cases involve fear of strangers, dark roads, homes, random encounters. Donald Harvey represented something completely different. He was a he was the fear of trust being broken because hospitals and nursing homes are places where people are vulnerable. Patients rely on the people around them for care, safety, and survival. Families hand loved ones over, believing they're in good hands. And according to Donald Harvey himself, that trust gave him access to dozens of victims. He would later be called or known as the Angel of Death, a healthcare serial killer who claimed responsibility for more than 30 murders across Kentucky and Ohio.
Hmm.
Um, and unlike last week with BTK, who sought attention and notoriety, Harvey operated very quietly. He didn't send letters. He didn't taunt the public. There was no dramatic crime scenes. It was just patients who unexpectedly died again and again and again. For many years, most of those deaths were simply accepted as natural. They were elderly patients. They were sick patients. They were people who were already in fragile conditions. But eventually, investigators began noticing something disturbing. Too many of those deaths seemed to follow Donald Harvey wherever he worked. So Donald Harvey was born in 1952 in Butler County, Kentucky. He had a very troubled childhood. He later described abuse and trauma going up. Shock of shocks there. If you don't want to raise a serial killer, what do we say, kids? Don't
Don't
beat your
beat your
kids.
kids. Don't
Um,
beat your kids.
but the details of all this really varied depending on the interview. By his teenage years, he reportedly struggled socially and emotionally, often feeling isolated. And as a young adult, he entered healthcare work, just in support roles. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a nurse. He did orderly work. He did hospital assistance. They were jobs that still provided direct access to patients, and that access is what became very critical. In the early 70s, he began working at Marymount Hospital in Kentucky, and it was there, through his later confessions, that the killing began. At first, he claimed that he viewed the deaths of acts of mercy, patients who were elderly and suffering. But over time, those motivations became way darker and much less clear. It later became more about control, curiosity, and power. Because eventually the death itself became very routine. One of the first victims he admitted to killing was a patient named John Powell. Powell had suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. And Harvey later claimed he believed the man was suffering and near death already. And so one night while he was alone with the patient, Harvey smothered him with a pillow. No one suspected murder because the death appeared natural. The patient had already been ill and there was nothing immediately that raised alarm. But for Harvey, this became a turning point. He realized something very terrifying at this point. He could kill people and no one would notice. That's when the murders escalated, and he began experimenting with different methods, as I had mentioned earlier, from smothering, poisoning. He would contaminate food. He would inject substances into patients. Later on, he claimed to have used arsenic, cyanide, rat poison, hepatitis contaminated materials, and even insulin overdoses. And because many of the victims were already elderly or hospitalized, this made their deaths easier to explain away. A sudden decline in a hospital setting does not often immediately trigger suspicion, especially in the 1970s, where oversight and forensic review were far less sophisticated than today. Not only that, Harvey moved between facilities. After leaving Kentucky, he later worked in hospitals and nursing homes in Ohio, where investigators believe many additional murders occurred, but the pattern was staying the same. Patients would deteriorate unexpectedly, death would cluster around Harvey's shifts, but still no one was connecting it. What really makes it very disturbing is the intimacy of the crimes, because he wasn't attacking strangers in public places. He's killing people who are already vulnerable, lying in hospital beds and trusting the staff around them. So for years, he continued operating almost completely unnoticed. As the years passed, his crimes became more frequent and varied. And what may have begun as what people later described as mercy killings really evolved. He no longer targeted only patients who were critically ill. Sometimes he targeted victims who were recovering. Some were expected to survive, and some weren't even patients at all. He later admitted his killings expanded beyond hospitals and nursing homes. He confessed to poisoning acquaintances, neighbors, and even former partners. In several cases, he claimed the motive was anger, resentment, or simply desire for control. And by the late 70s and early 80s, he had worked in multiple healthcare facilities across Kentucky and Ohio. And at many of those locations, unusual deaths followed. Um, it rarely triggered immediate suspicion, and that's part of what made him so difficult to detect. He understood the environment. He understood that hospitals already contain death and that nursing homes already contain people on decline, and patients sometimes worsen unexpectedly, and that's what he used as his cover. Investigators later believed many victims were poisoned gradually in small doses with delayed effects so that the symptoms could resemble a natural illness or complications from existing conditions. So he was blending murder into routine care. At one particular facility, he reportedly became known for frequently being present when patients died. Some coworkers even joked that and referred to him as unlucky, but no one initially imagined that they were working beside the serial killer. Because Harvey would just remain calm, very quiet, very soft-spoken. Honestly, he was almost forgettable, and that it's that normal appearance that allowed him to continue for years. By the time authorities finally began investigating him seriously, he would eventually confess to 37 murders, though investigators believe the true number may never be known. And the thing that haunted investigators most was that if one accidental discovery had not occurred, he may have continued killing indefinitely, because Donald Harvey avoided detection. Patients died, families grieved, hospitals moved on. And because the patients were already elderly or already ill, most of the deaths didn't receive the scrutiny that might have uncovered the pattern earlier. However, in 1987, that finally changed. It started with one patient. Strangely enough, another man named John Powell, not the earlier victim we talked to, but this was another patient later in Ohio. And he began showing unusual symptoms while hospitalized. And so medical staff noticed signs that suggested poisoning rather than natural decline. So they performed tests, and this is where they found he had elevated levels of arsenic and other toxic substances in his system. So suddenly investigators were looking at something very different. This wasn't a medical complication. This now looked to be attempted murder. Attention quickly turned to the staff who had access to the patient, and before long, suspicion landed flat on Donald Harvey. Authorities looked at his employment history, and as they looked into prior workspaces, that's when the disturbing patterns emerged. Unexpected deaths, clusters of fatalities during his shifts, patients deteriorating suddenly without clear explanation. And the more investigators examined, the worse it became. When confronted, Donald Harvey eventually just confessed, and then the confessions kept going. He admitted to poisoning, smothering, contaminating food. He described using the arsenic, cyanide, insulin, and other substances to kill vulnerable people who were under his care. And investigators were stunned by the scale of what they were hearing, because this wasn't one murder or two or even 10. Harvey just very calmly described dozens of murders. And it was his demeanor during the confessions that really chilled people, because by most accounts, he spoke very matter-of-factly. He spoke very detached and like almost without emotion, like he was discussing routine tasks rather than human lives. So the investigation rapidly expanded across multiple hospitals and nursing homes, and as records were reviewed, authorities began to realize they might be looking at one of the deadliest healthcare serial killers in American history. As they continued questioning him, the full scope of the case began to emerge. Harvey was confessing to killing patients over a span of nearly 2 decades. He described methods that were quiet, difficult to detect, often blended in normal medical decline. Poisoning became one of his primary methods because the symptoms could mimic natural illness. And then his confession stretched across multiple facilities in both Kentucky and Ohio, and the victim count just kept growing. Again, eventually Harvey admitted to 37 murders. Investigators do believe to this day that it's potentially higher. Some estimates suggesting that dozens more suspicious deaths may never be conclusively tied to him. But at this point, authorities now faced a massive challenge. Many of the deaths had occurred years earlier, and some of the victims had already been cremated. Medical records were incomplete, and they were still decades away from forensic testing. So prosecutors still felt they had enough to move the case forward. And in 1987, Donald Harvey accepted a plea agreement. Rather than forcing the victim's family through years of lengthy trials, Harvey pleaded guilty to multiple murders in Ohio and Kentucky, and the plea ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. During court proceedings, though, Harvey showed very, very little visible emotion, just like he did during the confession. Families had to listen in as details emerged about their loved ones who had entered hospitals expecting care and instead encountered someone who viewed them as opportunities. The betrayal at the very center of this is what really weighed down the proceedings, because again, they were not random encounters. These were patients who were already vulnerable and trusted the medical system. Ultimately, Harvey received multiple life sentences. And finally, no problem. And finally, with that, he was removed from society. The story didn't completely end there. Because even in prison, his life would eventually come to a violent conclusion. He spent decades in prison following his convictions. And for most families, that was at least some matter of closure, knowing he would never again have access to patients. But the questions remained. Were there additional victims? How many deaths had gone unnoticed? And could he have been stopped earlier? Harvey occasionally gave interviews from prison. Sometimes he discussed the murders in disturbingly calm terms. He often portrayed some killings as acts of mercy, but investigators and victims strongly rejected that characterization. In March of 2017, his story would come to an end while he was incarcerated at the Toledo Correctional Facility. He was assaulted by another inmate. He suffered severe injuries and later died at the hospital at 64 years old. For some, his death closed this case. For others, the damage had already been done earlier because no sentence and no prison death could undo the betrayal that this man did. At a place that where you're supposed to be able to trust, you give your life to somebody, and he completely betrayed that. So that's our A to Z journey that moved us into Kentucky. Donald Harvey kind of stands apart from a lot of the killers we covered because, as I had said very early in this episode, we had no dark alleys, no roadside abductions, no break-ins in the middle of the night. The murders happened where you're supposed to feel safe. Places built around trust. And according to his own confession, Donald Harvey used that trust as a cover for nearly 2 decades. Patients who were already weak, families that were already afraid, deaths that could be easily explained away.
It is distinctly possible that he actually may not even know the extent because he did it so many times for so long. I think someone said he estimated like 70. Yeah. But he doesn't really know because he did it so often.
Yeah. And he started off thinking they were mercy killings, and he may not think about those. And that's what really makes this case so disturbing. Not just the number of victims, but the environment, because the danger was not outside the hospital; it was inside. And that's, he is not the only healthcare worker serial killer.
No.
And that's a little scary.
Yeah.
That's a little scary because
we have a word for it. It's called an angel of death, or a phrase for it.
Yeah. Well, and they called him
because
angel
it's fairly
of mercy.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is. People take advantage of this situation. Again, if I have to go to the hospital, or one of my loved ones has to go to the hospital, I have to believe they're safe there. I have to believe they're going to be treated with care, and I shouldn't have to be afraid that there could possibly be a serial killer sitting there in that hospital. And that's what Donald Harvey abused, and that's what he corrupted. So that was the story of Donald Harvey.
Well, thank you for that, sir.
You betcha. You betcha. With that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more about us on nerderymurdery.com. It's our hub. It's our website. You will find our albums, our books that we have published, and you will find the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often update.
Yeah, definitely check these out. You could see some of the scenes from Tales from the Darkside. It's good stuff. You really need to check it out, and hopefully you can stream it when this actually airs. Again, it pops up and down, usually on one of the free sites.
Awesome. Appreciate your work on all that.
Thank you, sir.
You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery Murdery fandom, please do consider something from there. It does help us with free advertisement. Let's just go ahead and admit it right out. You look damn good in it.
Damn good.
Damn good. You can also find the link to our Patreon if you wish to become a patron. Both our merchandise sales and our patrons do help with the costs that are associated with this show. It does cost to keep us on the air, from our uploads, our storage, our website, everything, to bring you this fine content each and every week, and we do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. One thing you can do that's completely free, though, only takes a few minutes of your time. Please leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information we discuss. Please do that for our books as well. Those of you out there, you have no idea what those ratings do for us, because they really do expose us as podcasters, as authors.
You can read a little bit of it and rate it. You don't necessarily have to purchase it either. I would rather.
On Amazon, I think you do have to purchase it. But I mean, if you have a Prime account, you can read it. If the book is KENP like mine is, you can read it for free. There you go. So you can read those for free. But no, you do have to be a verified purchaser, whether it's through Amazon Prime or purchase, because Amazon will remove if they can't verify the purchase. Got to be careful on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. And last but certainly not least, as we always close out our show, to our good friend Chuck, you can go to sleep now.
Good night, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck. With that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.